I saw some things where people should have been, but the early things that I saw, I didn't know enough to know they were dangerous when they did things to us. Like, I wasn't going to tell you the one about the third fire jump was West Yellowstone. And it was way up in the north end of the park. Yeah, very high, probably about 9 or 10,000 feet. And it was very windy, too windy, but it was a real small fire. And it would be real easy if you could get to it. But it was on the top of a ridge. And on one side of the ridge, there's a river down there about 3 or 4,000 feet. And it's straight down. And the ridge up on top here, and the fire's back over on this side, just 400 or 500 yards across and down. But it's also quite steep on this side, so you really kind of had just the ground. Well, the spotter, who was a foreman who had been there for forever, he had a lot of experience, but he also had the reputation of doing things, but he didn't kill anybody, so it must have been right. But he was not the one you wanted to have when things got tricky or scary, because you knew you were going to jump. So he figured out that he could fly into the wind over the ridge at about 300 feet. But you would be dropping, it would be like 3 or 4,000 feet down where you went out. If you didn't have a parachute, you would go straight down. And so you jumped actually at that, but all you had was just a few seconds from when you went out and the chute opened, you turn around, you're on the ground. If everything worked right. So he had to be right on the wind. And if you were a little bit wrong, one of the guys came in and tiptoed across the top of the mountain, but he couldn't stop. And then he was gone. And he didn't come back till late that day. He spent all day climbing back up. The first one, same guy dropping him, that was the spotter in charge. One guy, and I don't remember if he was one of our rookie guys or not. I don't remember who he was. But it was up by Libby. And it was in a clear cut, an old clear cut from maybe 10 or 15 years, to where the brush had grown up. All the downfall was still there, but the brush had grown up over it. If you look at it from the air, it almost looked like a meadow. And it had all those gnarly logs and everything underneath it. And then it had the seed trees that they had left, those great big tall tamaracks that had no branches virtually left on them, just a few gnarly ones without much of anything in terms of needles or whatever. They looked like big tall telephone poles with a few arms hanging out of them. And this guy hit that thing and had one line hanging on a branch. And he's about 100, and I think they figured 130 feet up, because they had letdown ropes for 100 feet here. They're 200 in California, 250. But here they were just 100. And they knew the guys that were on the ground that had experience knew that he wasn't going to be able to reach the ground. And they didn't have much of a way to get anything to him. But they had dropped spurs, and he made it down to as far as he could go, but he's still 20 or 30 feet above the ground with that one line. He would have fallen right into the middle of the deadfall. And he's swaying, and he was far enough out that he couldn't get to the tree to tie in. So he's still just going down on that one. But one of the guys then found the spurs and got up there and pulled him in. As he pulled him in, he caught him. Nothing came off. So those kinds of deals are, and we're just dumbasses. I'm just sitting here looking at it saying, it looks pretty scary, but. So the bad things, even the things that were bad that weren't bad, it never got me. I didn't have it. You know, and we had places where we had really good people that knew fire. When we were down in Wyoming, we knew 2 hours before we were going to get burned out. We were going to get burned out. We had nowhere to go. It was virtually cliffs all around us, just straight down, and there's this thing that's probably about as big as this city block, this block here. And so they said, get out there and drop some of those trees, and we had chainsaws and you could work with that. We're on a slope about like that, and then all the way around us, you know, it looks like the mountaintops like this. And this was all blocked off, all done. There's no way to get out of there. And calmly just says, drop the trees and get your, you know, your jackets off, get them wet. The smoke will be nasty, but everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. Just it. You know, and I've gone to places where fires are coming. They're going to get you, but they're not going to get you because you knew from the air where you put your jump spot and where you had gone from, there would be a lake out there or a pond. Say, oh, we're going. We had a guy come in over by Eagle, which would be on the Yukon-Alaska border, and north of the Alcan up there, but right close to the Yukon River where it comes into Alaska. And their manager down there, they have 3 areas in Fairbanks. There's 2 districts in Alaska, Anchorage and Fairbanks, and then there's resource areas in those districts, because they were the equivalent of districts down here, or forests down here. And this was the 40-mile resource area, was what that was called. And this guy's name was Wandell Elliott. He came flying in a helicopter after we'd been on this fire for a day. And there's nothing we could do about it. Why they even put us out there was silly, but they did. And it was just, when they burn up there, if I'm telling you stuff, you don't stop me. I mean, we'll have 1 million or 2 million acre fires. And they just slowly go. They don't do what they do down here. And they just start walking, but they're impossible. I mean, there's nothing. They'll have spot fires 5 miles ahead. You just get out of the way and watch. He comes flying into this helicopter, and he gets out and he gathers everybody around and he says, now don't anybody panic, but you gotta have to run for your lives. And says, well, we don't think so. And he says, no, my God. He says, yes, you are. You know, you guys start running now. He says, we're staying in the lake. He says, we're happy. And so we went around. He says, we'll go gather up our gear, and we'll go over there to the edge of the lake, and we'll sit in the water, and we'll watch a big fire. And he fired us all. And then told us we hope we die. That's another. Here's my best one. You'll love this one. We used to go on patrol flights in Alaska, based on where what we called the Mod Squad, which was this high-end weather service and their airplanes that supposedly made rain, and they would go around and try and. I mean, I don't think I ever did anything, but it was funded. And wherever the weather forecasts were very hit and miss in Alaska, just depending on the reporting station. But that would be a briefing every day. Somebody getting paid and they do a job and there they go. So, but we would take off, like in the DC-3 from Fairbanks, and we would fly from Fairbanks over to the Yukon border, like kind of along the Yukon, along the Alcan. And then head north, and that got you to Eagle across the Yukon, and then you'd come swing back in, pretty much going west along the Yukon, and then go up north to the Brooks Range. And you're just flying and flying and flying, and you're only doing 140 miles an hour. So you can fly forever. Well, when we first took off out of there, we went and we flew into this place. The pilot was one of these, not like pilots are around here. He was a civilian guy who had his own plane. He flew all over Alaska, and he was a preacher. When he worked for, it was Northern Christian Broadcasting, something or other. He called it the Tower of Power, 50,000 watts. And the reason people listened to him and his station was, it was how the natives communicated with each other. Like if somebody had gone to town or the kids were off in school, because a lot of places didn't have schools for the kids, so they had to go outside. But it would be, hey Jim, this would be this Mary here, and Mary would say, I forgot to tell you to buy so and so and blah blah. So it's just that kind of talk. Yeah, it was very effective because people used it, and so everybody up there would listen and wait for their deal. So he did provide a service, but he was just an obnoxious SOP. And we went our first stop to fuel up again was Northway. The Northway's on the Alcan. So we landed at an airstrip on the beginning of this big, huge, long patrol that we were taking, which, we're flying to the eastern border. We're going to end up in Nome at night, and we're going to take off from Nome and repeat the return trip that way the next day. Just fly, fly, and fly. So we stop in Northway, and we go in Northway. They had a marvelously well-known kitchen with a really nice lady cook there, and she liked us, and the best hamburgers you could get anywhere, and we would also load up on beer. And the beer wasn't to drink on the airplane or do anything for there. The beer is to drop the thing out. That's cargo. If you found a fire, you're going to be on for a while. And they always gave us a really good price and everything. So we're in there having the hamburgers, and the guys are buying this beer, and they're trucking it over to the airplane. Probably about like 4 cases or something like that. And as they stood up to get the beer, this preacher pilot gets up on his chair, and he says, he says something to the effect that you people are the most evil people in the world. And he says, I know. He says, as much as I love God, I shouldn't have anything to do with you people. And we hadn't done anything. We were sitting there having hamburgers and a beer. And he says, if I had any sense, he says, I should do the world a favor, and when we get up in the air, I should just fly this airplane to the side of the mountain. And all the eyes are looking at me and just saying, what are we going to do? And he says, okay, boys, just sit down and stay, and I'm going over to the flight service station, and I'll call Fairbanks. And I went over and called Fairbanks and said, we don't have a pilot. We're not going anywhere. That was the last he ever flew for BLM. But I know he was still going for many years after that. But that's just, wow. And we had one do something similar in Nome because we ended up on that one too, also in Nome. But a couple of years later, I ended up on one in Nome, and all the guys head downtown to the Board of Trade Saloon, and there's some great bars in Nome. And by 4 or 5 in the morning, they get to stagger back out to the airport and go to sleep under the wing or in the plane pull the door out and just hang around waiting for everybody to come back. Well, most of us are all back, and here comes the pilot in a cab. And he gets out of the cab, and he is drunker than drunk can be. And so I just, let's get out of there. We're not going anywhere. If we can pull it off, we'll let him sleep the thing off and away we go. Other than that, we're not going anywhere. He got in the airplane. Some of the guys just stayed there in their sleeping bag and said, good, we're not going anywhere. He got in the airplane and he started it up and he started taxiing around, chasing people with a DC-3. And we had to do the same thing. We had to wait for him to deliver us another pilot.